Hi, this is Deepak. Still trying to figure out what I'll do when I grow up. But I'm here with Dr. Rudy Tanzi, and we are absolutely delighted to talk about our book, The Healing Self, a revolutionary new plan to supercharge your immunity and stay well for life. We've done two other books, Super Genes and Super Brain. We met many years ago at a TEDmed conference in the restroom, and I asked Rudy if the brain was a noun or a verb, and he said, let's go outside and have a conversation. We started exchanging emails, and now we're obsessed with everything to do with ultimate well-being, the healing self, which is you. Rudy, what's the book about?
Well, this book really is the culmination of our earlier books, Super Brain and Super Genes, where we talk about how to use your brain to rewire yourself for greater health and happiness, and how to reprogram your genes. And at this point, how do you apply that, and what do you apply that to? And what we've come up with is that the main enemy of health and happiness and well-being is one word, and you can tell them the word.
The word is inflammation. Now, inflammation, as the word means, is to be on fire. And
but not in a good way.
Not in a good way, yeah. So there is something called low-grade inflammation. There's acute inflammation. If you injure yourself and you have a bruise, that's acute inflammation. It protects you from bleeding to death, and it repairs your body. But there's something called low-grade inflammation, which actually doesn't have any symptoms. And when people have low-grade inflammation, it turns out to be the common risk factor for everything from Alzheimer's disease to cancer, to autoimmune illnesses, to diabetes, to type 2 diabetes, to metabolic syndrome, arthritis, you name it. There's low-grade inflammation in almost every illness. You even mentioned to me that people who have Alzheimer's and they have lots of tangles and amyloid in their brain, but if they don't have inflammation, they don't have the symptoms.
Yeah, so whether it's the brain or the body, inflammation is actually part of the immune system. It's meant to help you. It's meant to be a good thing. So whenever you have damage in a vessel, a blood vessel, or you have some damage in your brain due to the formation of what we call a plaque in Alzheimer's, so you might have a plaque forming around an artery of your heart. In each of these cases, you don't notice that going on, but your body, when it senses, your immune system senses there's a small wound inside the body, in a vessel, the brain, whatever, in your pancreas, then that tissue has been damaged. And the immune system has to go in there and get rid of that tissue. So it starts actually damaging the tissue more to kind of clean it out. So it's meant to be a good thing. It's meant to clean out the bad tissue so it can regenerate. The problem is, when there's low-grade chronic inflammation that never stops, you're constantly destroying tissue. If this happens in the brain, because it's triggered by Alzheimer's pathology, eventually you get dementia. If it happens in the pancreas, eventually diabetes. If it happens in the heart, eventually cardiovascular failure. So as we get older, the trick is how to work with our immune system so that inflammation is driven down. And the good news is that with lifestyle changes and choices, we can do that. That's what the book is about.
So we are here at Ariana Huffington's new company, Thrive.
Which is pretty cool, by the way.
Yeah, it's very cool. Ariana has been a friend of mine for 30 years. I was very close to her mother, and she was actually my patient. And Ariana and Agape are like family friends. And Ariana got on this health kick, if I may say so, when she had an injury because she hadn't had much sleep. And she's now the biggest champion for sleep. And we show very clearly, actually Rudy and his colleagues and others have shown that lack of delta sleep is probably one of the major risk factors for Alzheimer's and premature death.
For everything.
So you want to talk about that? What happens when we sleep? The streets in the brain,
yeah.
They kind of expand and sludge out all the amyloid.
Yeah, so when you sleep, when you dream, that's REM sleep, right? Right after REM sleep, you go into the deepest sleep called delta or slow wave sleep. And this is when, first of all of the memories you had during the day, picture them like on a thumb drive, they're downloaded onto the hard drive. They get consolidated. So you need a deep sleep for that. But the most important thing is during deep sleep, it's when the brain cleans itself out. I like to call this deep sleep mental floss, because you're flossing the brain out. So all of the stuff that accumulates in your brain, like plaque and different debris, because the brain's an active environment, you need to clean this stuff out. During deep sleep, the brain literally constricts and allows these various little cleaner cells, housekeeping cells called glial cells, to clean up. Now what can happen in the brain is if there's Alzheimer's type pathology that begins in all of us after 40 years old, and there's too much of it.
Not me.
Except for you. You're an exception. Then what will happen is those same little housekeeping cells can totally change, and instead of cleaning, like with these long extensions, they turn into little balls, right. And they start shooting out free radicals, oxygen-based bullets that kill. So the same cells that can be housekeepers, just like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, can turn against you. It's deep sleep, the right diet, exercise, and handling stress that keeps them housekeeping and cleaning the brain rather than hurting the brain by accident as part of the brain's immune system and what we call inflammation.
That's a beautiful description. Right. So one of the metaphors you can think of is, we are in New York City right now, and all the streets. At night, the scavengers come, or I shouldn't say scavengers, the street cleaners come, and they take away the garbage. But in deep sleep, the streets actually expand because the neurons are contracting, and the amyloid flushes down.
Well, two things. It's flushed, but a big process is because the brain has a lymphatic system. We never knew that before. That's new. Imagine it took this long to find out our brain has a lymphatic system that flushes. We never thought it did. But it also has these little cells that eat the debris that's being flushed.
That's right.
So you get double the action during your deep sleep.
So, things that cause this low-grade inflammation, which you don't notice because there are no symptoms unless you do blood tests like C-reactive protein and you measure what cytokines and so on. Cytokines. But lack of sleep, you mentioned, stress, unhealthy emotions like fear and anger, hostility, resentments, grievances, guilt, shame, which are basically all the consequence of stress. And then the third thing is lack of exercise or movement. The fourth thing is poor nutrition. Anything that's manufactured, refined, processed, has too much sugar, or food that has come from a factory that has antibiotics, hormones, pesticides, which are petroleum products, and just lack of contact with the natural environment, with nature. So in our book, we have a 7-day plan. And the first day, we take you sequentially to do one thing at a time. So the first day is all about diet. How do you go to an anti-inflammatory diet? The second day is about how do you manage stress. The third day is about anti-aging. Now, a lot of people say, what the heck does that mean? But the biological markers of aging are very flexible. In fact, Rudy and I have a study on telomerase and other gene expressions that are changed through meditation, but there are many anti-aging techniques. The fourth day is about the cycle of rest and activity and how to reset your biological rhythms. The fifth day is about core beliefs. The sixth day is about the experience that we call flow, non-resistance, and the final day is about spiritual evolution. It's a pretty complete prescription for well-being, would you say?
Yeah, and people might be saying, well, if you just do one thing one day at a time, how can that help you? Mm-hmm. So the idea is to really focus on just one thing all day, like the right diet, and then the core belief systems. What will happen is, as you do this week after week, your brain, thanks to neuroplasticity, which we wrote about in Superbrain, will rewire and start developing a new habit at the level of how your nerve cells connect with each other. And as we wrote about in Super Genes, your genes, although you don't change the actual genes, the activity of your genes, what we call gene expression, changes. So all these different genes turn up and down their expression or their activity to create a new program. Like literally your DNA gets chemically modified to take on a new habit. So you do this 7-day plan religiously for 60 days, and your genes will reprogram, your brain literally rewires, and this is physically validated, and then you don't have to think about it. It's automatic. You won't even think about junk food. You won't even think about not getting up for exercise. It becomes just automatic habits. So bad habits get reprogrammed physically as good habits. So the 7-day plan takes about 2 months for this to happen, but once it happens, you're on autopilot and you're good to go.
So, the new trend now in all of science, biological science, is what is called whole systems biology. When I was trained as a medical doctor, I became an internist, endocrinologist, neuroendocrinologist, and of course, these days also you have different specialties, gastroenterology, cardiology. But the body behaves as a whole system, and the new word is whole systems biology. Your brain, your mind, your experiences of the world, your genes, your microbiome, your inflammatory markers or lack of, and epigenetics, the new science of how genes turn on and off, or how they get upregulated or downregulated. It's all part of a system, and that system is dictated by how you experience your life every day. And you metabolize your experiences into your biological activity. That's what our book is about.
So right now, you're the sum of all your experiences, which were the result of your choices.
That's right.
So
now, of course, in India we use words like karma, but people think karma is fatalistic. No, karma is the ultimate affirmation of choices.
Well, karma is always subject to change. It's quantum probability,
That's right?
So the thing is that the choices you make today will determine the experiences you have right now, and that's going to determine your health and happiness in the future. So, what's done is done. But the great thing about the body people don't realize is how flexible it is, that your brain can be rewired at any time. Right now, your brain's being rewired listening to us.
That goes
your gene
back
expression can be changed.
Original conversation is the brain a noun or a verb? Because
exactly.
The body is a verb.
The brain's a verb. Your genes are a verb. Nothing is stationary, and everything's subject to change.
There are no
it's not with your choices.
There are no nouns in the universe. Nouns are conventions of language, but they don't reflect reality. Everything is dynamic, and it's constantly on the move. The only thing that's not on the move, in a sense, is the awareness, the witnessing awareness in which all this is happening. And that's your true self. That's what we mean by the healing self. The word healing is related to the word holy, wholeness. Healing is a return of the memory of wholeness, and that comes when you get in touch with your innermost being, the self. And in Eastern wisdom traditions, the self of the individual is the self of the universe, the ground of being in which everything arises and subsides in an eternal now. That's what our book is about. It combines spiritual insights from ancient wisdom traditions with the latest science that Rudy brings as a geneticist, as a professor of neurology at Harvard, and as a great scientist.
We have some questions from the audience.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take for you guys to write this book, and sort of what was that like writing it together?
It took us about a little over a year.
A little more, yeah.
A little more.
Between a year and 2 years. But
time
the ideas
flies by
for
when you're having fun, right?
The thing about it is we discussed the ideas for our books for a long time before we actually start writing. So there's the whole just get the idea of the book, discussion, then research, and then the writing. So the writing itself took a year. But
and the scientific validation which comes from, Rudy.
Have you started to institute this within your own lives, or do you have one thing a day that you do to protect your own health?
Well, I definitely get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. That's number one. Exercise. I'm vegetarian. I think my downfall is that I drink wine, and wine puts on weight. So so that's probably something I still have to fix. But more or less, I do everything in the book.
For me, it's natural.
Someone,
being honest.
No, I know.
Someone mentioned that they have fibromyalgia and it's gotten much worse. For someone struggling, would there be recommendations in this book to help
Absolutely.
that?
Fibromyalgia is one of those, used to be called non-specific, but it's an expression of inflammation like everything else, low-grade inflammation.
Yeah, most problems come down to inflammation. So there are supplements that also, I take supplements like omega-3 fatty acids, DHA and EPA. I get them vegan-based because I'm vegetarian, but also I don't trust some, unless the fish oil is really clean. I'm afraid of all the heavy metal contamination in fish oil. But there are a lot of new supplements that people are looking at, and we're studying in my lab. So we invented something called Alzheimer's in a dish, where we can grow a mini human, little baby human brain in a dish, and we can recreate Alzheimer's pathology in 5 weeks in that little mini brain. And then that allows us to now test every drug and every natural product and supplement in the world on those mini brains to see what stops the inflammation and the pathologies that cause dementia and Alzheimer's. And a lot of what we find is supplements. And so a lot of the supplements I take and my friends take and family take, and I share them with others, but they all have something in common, which is they stop inflammation or they protect nerve cells from inflammation. So it's either protecting the nerve cell from the onslaught of inflammation, or it stops the inflammation itself. And most of these are pretty easy to get on Amazon.
We have a lot of just fans. They're giving you big shout outs. They can't wait to read this book, and they're just huge fans of you both in general. Is there any last words of advice or wisdom that you'd like to share with our audience today?
I have a formula that I use every day. So after my meditation, I introduce 4 intentions while I feel my body: joyful, energetic body, loving, compassionate heart, reflective, alert mind, and lightness of being. And those 4 intentions guide my behavior for the rest of the day.
I would just say keep moving physically, mentally, and spiritually, and it's all about not staying still, move in the right direction. Force yourself to do it.
Awesome. And where can we find your book, and when is it out?
Anywhere where books are sold today.
Wonderful.
That's
Thanks
right.
for being here.